Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be back with this topic of self-care that I feel we all desperately need, especially after the year that we've had. So it's always very exciting to do this talk. Not just because like I get to share these with you, but I feel like it becomes an exchange of tips and advice that we can all give each other and support each other through this. So self-care has never been more important than during this emergency that we've had. So to tell you a little bit more about myself, and I really appreciate the library having me again. It's really a great opportunity and collaboration. I work at the Adelphi Breast Cancer Program. We are an organization based at the School of Social Work at Adelphi University. And my part of the program is more about prevention. So we have a program, we help anyone that has been affected by breast cancer. So if you or someone that you know has been affected by this, please reach out. I will leave my information in the chat for you as well. But as I said, my part of the program is more on the prevention part and doing community education. I'm a health educator by trade, and I've been doing this for many years. And I just really enjoy like sharing information with our community. I'm also currently a public health student at Adelphi, and because of what's going on with the pandemic, we have seen a huge need for that in the community for learning more, or sometimes we need reminders about other kinds of topics. So we have included in our repertoire of topics things like stress management and self-care, today's talk, which kind of go hand in hand. And again, it has never been this important. It's more important than ever to take care of ourselves. So to kind of jump into our topic, if you're feeling shy, I know sometimes we come back tired from work, and we may just not just want to turn our camera on. But if you want to share, this is I like things to be a conversation. So feel free to unmute yourself and share any experiences or any advice as well. We all have plenty of experience, life experience too. And also, but if you want to just put things in the chat, that would be great too. So I'm not sure if you have asked yourself or anyone I feel like we get asked a lot, like, how are you, right? And we always say, oh yes, I'm doing fine. It's sort of like that general interaction, right? Like, oh, I'm doing fine. But really, how are we? So have you asked yourself that question, or has anyone asked you and you just felt like you wanted to just let it all out? So this is your chance. Does anyone want to share how they are? If you could summarize it in one word, what would it be? So you can go ahead and put it in the chat if you want. So let's see who's going to be. Thank you, Michelle. Overwhelmed. Who agrees with that? Yep. Distressed. Tired. Overworked. Overwhelmed. Yes. Thank you. When will the pandemic end? So that feeling of uncertainty, right? The feelings of uncertainty are one of the main reasons that we feel chronic stress when we lose control over the things that we know are routine. Are certainly having a routine is one way in which us humans sort of exercise our control. And once we kind of lost that, we started getting those feelings of uncertainty, and that generates a lot of stress and anxiety. So all of these things are reasons to um, care for, to start practicing a little self-care. And some of you may already have some of these practices, and or maybe you'll, you know, decide to try a new one. So it's always good. Even when we practice self-care, we have to be kind to ourselves, and otherwise it becomes like another source of stress, right? Like, oh, I have to do something good for myself, but we don't. Again, always about being kind to ourselves. So let's see, I'm gonna sort of share my screen now, but thank you so much everyone for sharing, because it's something that sometimes we feel alone, and it, like we're the only ones experiencing this. But I feel the pandemic has kind of created that link between all of us. Yes, we're all in this, and we're all going through all of these emotions, and the loss that in so many ways some of us have experienced more than others, but we all lost that our routine, our sense of reality, right? So that's a common loss that we've all experienced. Okay, so where is my, here it is. Let me, so do you, let's see. Oh, maybe, let me, this is not, I'm sorry. I think I shared the wrong screen. Zoom is a whole other thing. So while um, I'm putting up the actual presentation, start thinking about what are some ways, you can put them in the chat too, what are some ways in which you practice self-care, what you consider are some of the maybe daily or weekly, it could be something that you do for self-care. So you can start kind of putting that into the chat as well. Okay, so here we go. We should have this now. All right, I don't see anything there yet, so I'm just gonna, okay, let me put this down. Okay, so is everyone able to see my screen? I lost everyone. Let me see here. Do you, Steve, I'm not really sure if you can see my screen. I guess you do, right?
I could see it, Angelica.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. Okay, perfect. Do you see it like split up into different screens or just the presentation?
I see just the presentation, and then I see on the side, of course, the gallery of everyone.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, great.
It looks good up on the screen.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so we're getting interesting ones here. Audiobooks, definitely. Listening to music, good books, a nice TV show, yes. Being in nature, oh my goodness, yes. Thank you for reminding me. I do always mean to include it in this presentation, and the importance of spending time in nature, especially now that the weather is changing, and you know, flowers, and it's just, well, unless you have allergies, but take, you know, take your allergy medication and get out there. Journaling, thank you, yes. All those really wonderful self-care. And it's funny because if you're here, it's because you already doing or trying to learn something. So you already know the importance of practicing self-care somehow. So loving all of these. Setting boundaries for myself, my work has really improved my mental health. Yes. And that one some of us might need a lot of help with that. Waking up before the kids for a long time. Very good. Oh my God, all of these are wonderful. Yes. And we might be able to, I think we're gonna speak about a bunch of these. So, oh my God, what? It was all the way at the end. So, okay. So there's a very tight relationship between self-care, our sense of self-love, and our not just physical but emotional and psychological health. So they are all related. They're part of a cycle. When we do talks, for example, with women who had breast cancer, and just having a chronic disease sort of starts affecting their own self-perception and their own self-esteem. And then that in turn affects their self-care. And some of them might stop going for appointments or fall into depression. So it's a cycle. And the wonderful thing is that we can break that cycle, and it is possible. Only by using different techniques, right? So that's a good thing. And there's so many different ways that we can practice some of the self-care, so we can break that cycle, or loving ourselves more, so that we can in turn practice better self-care. So it's all part of it, and we can break it, which is always the good news. So self-esteem, or it's our perception, or I kind of use it interchangeably with self-love, but self-esteem is really our own perception of ourselves. It's very personal. It's not what anyone else thinks about us. It's how we see ourselves, and it's very tied to are practicing self-care, and vice versa. When we practice self-care, we tend to have higher self-esteem. People who don't practice enough self-care, or they tend to kind of leave their own well-being behind, their self-esteem tends to go down. They experience more feelings of unhappiness, and they also get physically ill more often, as the research shows. So it's important to work on all aspects, and again, if we work on one, we have a good chance of improving everything else. So so that's it. The thing with self-esteem, however, or self-love, is that it's influenced by so many other factors, right? So what are some of the factors that may influence our self-esteem?
How we feel about our appearance.
Right. So our physical appearance, right? And also those are so tied to that social expectation, right? Those are learned perceptions that we grew up with, or that we absorb from anywhere else, right? Oh, I have to look this way to feel good about myself. So that's something that it's very common. I think especially for women that can be an issue. We get these constant messages that, okay, you have to look a certain way. But also for men, in particular, this past few years, this has been a strengthening of that message as well. You know, look a certain way, and be them. You know, go to the gym and build your muscles, that kind of thing. So it's almost it's unfortunate that it's now, you know, also happening to them as well. There's something in the chat. Let's see. Oh, a supportive community. Yes. Yes. Support, social support. Us human beings are social beings. So social support. And that's also the big loss of this pandemic in so many ways. So so that's self-esteem, self-love in general. And then, like I said, it affects our self-care, or how likely we are to practice self-care, but also self-care affects our self-esteem. But our self-esteem is affected by so many different factors. So family, our social environment, the way we grew up, any traumatic experiences that we may have, or lived through, especially in our childhood, which is that window of vulnerability to so many different factors. Any health conditions or illnesses, that affects your self-esteem too. We're going to talk a little bit about that negative self-talk as well in a few moments. So there are different ways, and some of the techniques that help you practice self-care target a lot of these conditions, so that they don't affect us and our self-esteem as much. Tone and content of, thank you, thank you, Manisha. Yes, the tone and content of self-talk, and that inner dialogue that we have constantly going on, and a lot of times it's negative. So we'll take a look at that as well. So self-esteem empowers us to practice better self-care. We do know that it's affecting our physical, but also our psychological health. It affects our sleep, and sleeping is so important. We can feel a lot of times even guilty about rest or finding moments of rest, but if your body's telling you it's needed, right? So and we'll talk about that too. And I mentioned earlier that people who don't practice enough self-care, they tend to feel less happy and they get ill more often. So that's important to keep in mind too. I think that from all of your comments, we can see that self-care can take many different shapes for all of us, right? So even though there's this definition, we know that anything that we do, any action that we consciously make to increase our well-being, to take care of our health, to take responsibility for our own health, it's an action towards self-care. So I know a lot also as a society, we rely on healthcare, but most of the time that we're not in the doctor's office most of the time. That's minimal. Most of our time is spent outside of the doctor's office, and that's okay. That's good, right? We don't want to live in a hospital or at the doctor's office, but because most of the time we're spending with us on our own, that's the best reason to know that we need to practice self-care, and a little bit goes a long way. So we just have to prioritize it. A lot of times it starts falling to the back seat, especially during, for example, during the pandemic, you know, when a lot of us might have experienced changes at work, job loss, we lost relationships perhaps. A lot of people were not able to see their family members, for example. School, if, you know, can we go back to school? They having the children at home all of a sudden. So all of those changes created that sort of emergency. They put us in survival mode. But again, if it's time, and it has also highlighted the importance of prioritizing our own self-care. If we don't do it, nobody else will do it for us, and it's a necessity. It's absolutely a necessity. So we need to make time for it, and it looks like a lot of you already know that, and you're prioritizing it by doing so many of those things. Okay, so I know that we also have the need to take care of our families, and we see it a lot with our clients who are mostly women. They A lot of times they don't want to take that time because they're taking care of other people. They're taking care of their children, of their parents. They're caregivers, right? And it's difficult. They put everybody else first. I say oftentimes we put the neighbor's cat before we put ourselves, and then us. But the problem with this is that we are being depleted from our energy, from our own inner resources. And when that happens, the less we have to give. What are we giving to them? So it is in our best interest, not just for our own reasons or for our own well-being, but for that of our families, to take care of us first, to put us first. That is what self-care means, putting our own needs first. If we don't do that, we won't be able to take care of anyone else. We won't have anything to give. I love that metaphor. I know it's so commonly used, but it's such a great example. When you go on an airplane and they explain to you, when, in case of emergency, if the oxygen mask comes down, you put your oxygen mask first, and then you help everyone else. And that is exactly what we have to practice in real life. So Manisha says, self-care isn't just an action for me. It starts with awareness. Yes. If I want a healthy mental and physical life, I have to start with compassion. Yes. Absolutely. And compassion for ourselves, right? That's the most important thing. A lot of times that doesn't come easily, and we'll take a look at that too. But yes, it starts with making that conscious effort, being aware of my own needs, of how I'm feeling, and then, okay, I need this time. This is it, and letting others know that I'm important, right? A lot of people feel that by doing that, they're acting selfish. We have almost been trained from childhood that, like, you do things for others first, and then, but it's not selfish. It's about self-love, self-esteem, about putting your own needs as a priority so that you can be better for others, right? Okay, excellent, thank you. So how do we practice self-care? I know many of you mentioned this already, and there are different types of self-care. There's physical, so there are ways to target that your physical health. So by sleeping well, doing a little bit of exercise, that can all help, and it's part of practicing self-care. But there's so many other areas, and you don't have to focus on all of them at once. But if you, and I think this goes to what Manisha just explained and mentioned in the chat, it's very important. It's about awareness. So that starts with us taking a moment and sitting down and say, okay, this is the area of my life where I need to, practice a little, that needs a little self-care, that needs a little extra love. So what is it? Is it your, or this is the way that I would prefer to practice self-care? Is it socially? Perhaps we felt the lack of social connection throughout this pandemic. So a way to practice a little self-care is to call a friend or set up a Zoom, even though we're all Zoomed out by now, but just making that effort to schedule a Zoom call with a friend, or maybe, again, now that the weather is a little nicer, well, not today, today was too cold, but maybe go out for a walk with a friend where you feel also safe, right? That kind of thing. If you are particularly stressed out about your finances, so that area may need a little self-care. So what is it that I can do? How am I taking that awareness into action, right? So all of those things, meditation, yoga, I know someone said journaling also. So all of those things, nature, of course. So there's a variety of ways in which we can practice self-care, and it's not one size fits all. We all have different ways. Personally, one of the ways in which I practice self-care is by cooking. I love just going into the kitchen and throwing things in a pan. But I know that for a lot of people, that would be their nightmare. That would be really stressful, right? So I know other people are more inclined to exercise. Perhaps that's not my favorite, but and so it's a matter of finding what warms your heart and makes you feel good. Oh, okay. I'm so sorry about this. Let's see if I can move this a little bit. Is this better? Okay. So I hope that helps a little bit. Okay, okay, thank you so much. All right, sounds good. So, okay, so let's get into some of the main ways in which we can practice some self-care. And I know some of you mentioned, like someone mentioned exercise. So being physically active is a great way. It helps us because it releases a lot of good chemicals, those endorphins, dopamine into our brains, and it just gives us that a natural feeling of wellness. So for a lot of people, just that boost of energy as well. So that's one of the things with physical activity. I personally, like I just admitted to you, I don't necessarily love, I've been trying to fall in love with physical activity for a long time, but one of the things that has really helped me is to realize that I do not have to do a whole lot of exercise all at once. So the studies actually show that you could break them down and still get the same benefit of exercising, particularly for self-care. So if you break down, let's say, you have an indoor bike or any type of workout, just if you break it down, if it's easier and you feel like you struggle to exercise, just 10 minutes in the morning, perhaps 10 minutes after, before or after lunch, and then in the evening. So you can still break it down and get the full benefit. You don't have to do everything all at once. I feel like that's probably one of the things that really changed the way I see exercise, and it has made things more manageable when it comes to working out. So it definitely makes you feel better. It helps your sleep, which is very important too. So it gives us like the capacity to continue our day and feel more energized. So, and also if you like me, you have a hard time making exercise a part of your daily routine. I don't know if anyone goes through that. It also helps to find an activity that they really love. I don't know why, like for a big part of my life, I felt that I had to exercise in a certain way. But it doesn't have to. I can pick anything, like that I really enjoy, and that even implies a little bit of movement. It doesn't have to be, like running around the neighborhood or going to the gym, because I don't enjoy those things. So if I don't, I'm less likely to stick with it. So I do like dancing. So I during the quarantine early days especially, turn on those YouTube dancing videos, and then dancing a little bit. So those are some of the things. It helps you kind of stick with it. And also once you the big hurdle is to the first part. Once you're there, once you got your sneakers on, your gym clothes or your workout clothes, you're more likely to go through with it. So it's that initial part, that initial 1 minute, 2 minutes that takes you to get ready and say, okay, this is what's happening. Once that happens, then the workout comes. I Many of us might feel, and this applies to exercise, but also for other things, that motivation, we're waiting to get motivated to exercise. And I realized that I would be waiting forever if I had to get motivated. It's just not going to happen. I can get motivated to do a lot of other things, but not to exercise. So, and we might have that activity that we don't really feel like we're motivated enough to do it. Um, so don't wait for motivation. Just make sure that that initial 1 minute gets done. So I leaving your sneakers, your workout clothes right there when you see it, and putting it on, and then it all falls into place. um, Scheduling it, if you're good with your calendar, just set up a date and a time. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 7 to 7:30 in the morning, this is what's happening, or 7 to 7:10, and then later in the day. But schedule it so you can see it. And research also shows that when we schedule something, even the action of writing it down or perhaps typing it into your calendar on the computer increases the likelihood that you will follow through with it. So that's sort of something that we can do to trick ourselves into practicing that self-care. And this is working on your physiological, but also the psychological part as well. And eating your plants, it's also a great way to practice self-care. I know there's a lot of information about nutrition, so I'm not going to go deep into this, but especially plants have a really beneficial effect on our body. Plants, especially the ones that have good fats for our mental health in particular. Avocado, nuts and seeds, for example, they have those good nutrients that our brains like very much. But also blueberries, for example, are a great fruit for your brain. So find ways to incorporate these foods into your daily menu. And you'll feel a lot of more clarity. Foods definitely have an effect on your well-being, not just physical well-being, but emotional. You can feel a lot of times we eat without really paying attention, and when you do, you can tell how different foods make you feel. So having that process of eating mindfully can let you know, how to feel about each different food. So, but definitely plants, more plants into our diet can have a great effect. And sleeping. I don't know about you, but for a long time I felt, first of all, who gets, okay, how many hours of sleep do you get at night? I was feeling that, like almost like guilty of sleeping like my 8 hours of sleep. Like I felt that if I slept 8 hours at night, like I was doing something. Maybe I was missing out. I wasn't working hard enough. I wasn't doing enough things. So it's, it feels a little guilty when you get a good night's sleep. Yes, Coretta says me too. Yes. Sometimes 7, that's okay. 7 is it's a good amount, probably more than what what we should get for sure. 6.5 usually. That's a little under the 5 to 6, not enough. And we know this. So yes, so we most people have experienced some kind of sleep disturbance. Sometimes we go to bed early or on time, and then it takes us a long time to fall asleep. Some other people wake up during the night and then their mind starts racing and they can't go back to sleep. So it comes in a lot of different versions, this sleeping problem. 6 hours, so that's probably okay. So 6.5. 6 actually is more kind of like the average what most people are doing, but we should really aim for our 8 hours of sleep. I know a lot of times that's not possible if you have children, definitely, but if you can sort of start increasing that, like let's try go to bed early, a little bit earlier every time. It does help, and it's worth investing in that. Do not feel guilty about getting your sleep or even taking a short nap during the day. If that's what your body's telling you, then you should honor that. Your body knows, so you should honor that. So that during our sleep, not just our memories are going into long-term memory or short-term memory. Our brain is also going through this process of healing. Our entire body is going through a process of healing. Our sleeping hormones usually kick in around 11. So if it's a good idea before that to start sort of winding down. My problem for a long time was I was probably going to bed like around after midnight for sure, like 1, sometimes 2 in the morning. I learned that from my father, who's just, I felt like that was normal, like just going to bed at that time. But then it also became normal to feel tired most of the next day and to wake up like groggy and just with my head in a cloud. So of course, if you're lacking sleep, that's how you're going to feel. So self-care, or part of our self-care, means to, again, consciously devoting some time to the good time for our sleeping, and also having a routine before we go to sleep. It's good, right? So perhaps making a little tea, going to sleep at night like at the same time, that's also sort of known that improves the way you sleep, including on the weekends, waking up at the same time every day. So all of those things, sleep deprivation excuse me, sleep deprivation can result into a whole array of afflictions to our health, from cognitive malfunctions, because we can't even think clearly after that. But also with time, people are more likely to get sick as well. Gabriela says, I usually get 6 hours. When I do sleep longer, I end up feeling tired. Yeah. Oh, okay. I tell myself, don't sleep too long because it makes you tired. So okay, so she's conditioned herself after 6 hours. But more is definitely, so it's good to like get to know your body too. So if you have tried it and you feel, because we don't stay the same throughout our entire life. Sometimes, like, and depending on the stage of development in which we are, the things that are happening around us, our environment. We may need a little bit more or less. So if at one point in your life you feel like if you sleep beyond 6 hours, you're just not, you don't feel so great the next day, by all means, that's what works for you. But for most people, it should be somewhere around like 7 to 8 hours. That's definitely, I know some people need more, like closer to 9 hours of sleep. So, but yes, definitely oversleeping can cause, have the same effect. So it is true. And one of the things that is related to self-care and sleep is that, and I know it's been happening a lot too, as a result of the pandemic, but I think in general people tend to do this, and you can be honest and tell me and share with you in the chat if this is something that you do. We wake up in the morning, and then the first thing we do is turn on the news. And then before we go to bed, that's the last thing we see, the news, or perhaps a movie, maybe a movie with violence in it. We know the news are not exactly, yes, okay, all right. I know you relate to that, and it's so common to do that. And we make it normal, it becomes normal. That's what people do, right? So there is a, almost that information epidemic as well, right? We feel the need to be constantly watching the news, and we tend to overdo it. When you really think about it, the part of the news that is novel, that is actual news, is very limited. They just keep repeating it throughout the entire day, and there's no need to continue to watch it. If you watch it early in the day, that sets the tone for your day. And especially with the news, we know there's nothing good most of the time. So again, it's setting the tone. When you go to sleep and you watch the news before you go to bed, you may be thinking it's not doing anything. Oh, like it doesn't affect me. My mom tells me this all the time, because I tell her, stop watching the news before you go to sleep. But she says, no, I don't care. It doesn't do anything. But at the subconscious level, it is. We have a conscious, it is our interactions, what we know, what we're conscious about, but our brain is also absorbing everything else that's happening. And those news are getting in there, and we increase our negative perception of the world, our fear, and also, even though it's a mind activity, our body will feel it like a physiologically. So because of the stress action, right, that fear reaction that we biologically have to stress, right? So it's that fight or flight response, right? So our brains don't really know the difference. If we get the input from the news, which is negative and fear based, our body's going to feel it as well, and it's going to experience it as if it was real, and it's real stress to it. So it's if you can dedicate a period of time throughout your day where you can inform, obviously watching the news is important. We need to be informed. More than watching the news, I feel like it's important just to be informed and know what to do, especially during the pandemic. We need to be alert and aware about the things that we need, guidelines, things that change. But so that's important. We normally can do that in about 20 minutes. I don't think we need anything beyond that. But a lot of us might overdo it. So I know I have in the past, and it also gets to you. So, and if it's not the news, perhaps other types of shows. I have experienced my own investigation discovery addiction, and it gets you anxious, for even if you feel like, oh, I know the difference between a TV show or something that happened to somebody else and in my own life, when you tend to overdo these things, again, you're physically like, even when we go to the movies, or when we used to be able to go to the movies, but even if we're watching a movie at home, and sometimes things get a little stressful, like in the movie, like you clench your jaw, you might like, tighten your wrists, you start feeling it, your body feels it. So especially before going to sleep, this is something that you might want to like make a few changes to, and start tuning into more relaxing things, perhaps listening to soft music or reading a book. I know some of you already mentioned you read books or listen to audiobooks. So especially like, as long as they're not like violent or terrible, books, then it's a good idea to wind down your day. Oh my goodness, I forgot about, so when we were talking about exercise, I thought about this, but sometimes I talk too much. But when you do exercise, I just feel like it's really worth doing this at least for a few seconds. So we don't only talk about self-care, but we get to practice it a little. So sometimes, it's especially these days, a lot of us might work in front of a computer screen constantly, so we tend to kind of start losing our posture, like we're kind of like this, and forget to take a pride posture, and put our shoulders back, and it's not necessarily a strenuous exercise, but it is exercise. Sometimes we can do simple exercises or stretching from the comfort of our chairs. That's my favorite kind of exercise. So one of my favorites also, if you are having a lot of tension, headaches because of stress, let's try this exercise. So you can put your knuckles right here, this bone right here, sort of like behind your ear, like this, and then you put your hands to the side of your face, and then sort of start shaking it from one side to the other. Some things might crack, but it feels really good. And if it's tender, just, you can massage that later. You can close your eyes too. Do it very slowly. Don't do it too fast because you don't want to get dizzy. But then like your head starts getting like lighter, and you can feel like it stretches that out. So it's really great. And then you can kind of, move your arms a little bit. Just, especially like if you're working in front of the computer constantly, it's good to practice. So you can, every hour or so, just make sure that you're stretching. Set up your timer, your alarm, like at least every 2 hours. If you can't every hour, just every 2 hours or so, just make sure that you're getting up, you're stretching out. And that usually takes a few seconds, but it will make a huge difference. So I love that, especially when you have a headache. That's a really good exercise to do. Also, if you you can kind of put take your hand and sort of move your head down about like 45 degrees, just sort of like pull it down like this, and take a deep breath, and then pull it a little further. It just feels really good. And then the other side. So 45 degrees, just down, tuck your chin down, take a deep breath, and pull. You pull as you exhale, and that's gonna stretch your cranial nerves right here and your muscles, and it feels really good. And then you can massage, just even, just give yourself a massage, like when you take a little break from the screens, and you can do it in front of the screen. as you can be thinking about your next project and sort of, massage the neck where we get a lot of the tension just gets stored right there. A lot of people started experiencing like TMJ, migraines, just because, we're in a different position right now. Sometimes at home is not the most ergonomic setup, right? So, okay. So, this kind of went into the relax and calm the mind, which is very important too. A lot of the activities that you mentioned you do for self-care fall into this category. So you can choose whatever activity. There are so many ways to use to calm your mind, and our minds are often sort of like a wild, untamed horse that is just running around in all different directions. And we tend to feel that we are the horse, right? That there's nothing we can do, but we are not the horse, we're the rider. So we can take charge. And it's a good exercise to take charge of our mind. It's almost like going to the gym and in flexing, right? It's that exercise of bringing the mind sort of back, especially to the present moment. And that is what mindfulness, for example, is all about. Mindfulness has become so popular, but it has been practiced for thousands of years, but it's a concept now that it's become really popular, and because it really works. The research shows that it works. So mindfulness is one of the best ways to practice self-care. A lot of the things that you mentioned also fall into that category because they bring us to the present moment, so we become more mindful. A lot of us tend to live a little bit in the past. Some other people or some of us might also tend to go to the future, but we never really stay in the present, and that's very important. It's a way to calm our mind, our wild horse that walks around or that runs around. So so just like going to the gym, calming the mind is a practice. We have to do it consistently. When we want to get our beach body, we don't go to the gym one day and then come back and say, okay, I'm done, right? We have to, it's something that you have to continuously work on it, and you'll get better. Even though for some of us, the first time we practice something with our mind, it might feel a little bit out of place, um, or we may not feel comfortable, but it will become, just practice it 1 or 2 minutes each day. People tend to practice yoga or stretching like we just did. I think a nice cup of tea a lot of times it's a good way. Using anything that uses your senses tends to bring you down to the present as well, or kind of connecting with our senses. So if you're drinking a cup of tea, just be conscious about smelling it and really taste it, and just look at it. That kind of that's the idea, just to connect that moment to your senses. The other way in which we can connect to the present moment, which is so great for self-care, is to breathe. And focusing on our breath immediately connects us to the now. So breathing is something we do all the time, fortunately, but we do it at the unconscious level. Our brainstem gives the order to breathe, ensures that we breathe, which is that part of the oldest part of our brain. And but we don't notice, right? So when we become more conscious of it, immediately that brings us to the present moment. So one real there's so many different techniques for breathing depending on how you're feeling or what your needs are, but in general we should be practicing a diaphragmatic breathing technique, which is very simple. Basically, when you inhale, your belly should come out, sort of like inflating a balloon. And when you exhale, your belly deflates. Um, a lot of times when we're stressed out and we breathe deeply, we tend to do this. But this is only increasing our tension, right? So make sure, and one way to do this is that you put one hand on your chest or right here, and then the other hand you can put on your upper belly, sort of, so that you know where you're breathing from. So again, when you're inhaling, you should feel your belly sort of, or your abdomen um, come out like a balloon, not your chest, right? So your chest needs to stay where it is, your shoulders relaxed and down, and then, so let's try that. Let's try to take one deep breath. You can close your eyes too. That really helps a lot too. So take one deep breath, belly out. Okay, great. And now through your mouth, very slowly, just exhale. And then your abdomen contracts, it deflates. So you can try that again. To just practice self-care. That simple. It's that simple. We can practice self-care just by breathing and putting our mind into it, just thinking about the way in which we breathe. So that's the simple diaphragmatic breath. There's also other techniques. There's one called the square. I'm not sure if anyone has tried it, or there's so many, I'm sure you might know some of them. But the square is one of my favorites. You can inhale, counting to 4. Then you hold your breath, counting to 4. Then you exhale, counting to 4. You hold again for 4. So that's why it's a square. So we can try that 2 more times. So let's see. We can inhale 4 seconds. 3, 4. You hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. Hold. Inhale again. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. And hold. Okay, so that is the square. You can do 3s and like a triangle. But then also one of my favorites is, especially for headaches as well. I don't know if you can tell that I get a lot of headaches sometimes. So I know different techniques to target those headaches. But if you alternating our nostrils to breathe can also help us. It brings oxygen to the opposite side of our brain. So it's very calming. So you can, with your thumb, you can cover one nostril and then inhale through the other one. And then at that moment, you kind of flip with your fingers. So you use your index to switch. And then you cover the one that was originally open and exhale your air through the one that you closed originally with your thumb. So let's try that. And then again. Okay. So those are some different breathing techniques that you can practice in a pinch. If you're anxious about a work presentation, or maybe you had an argument with someone, or you have to have a difficult conversation with somebody, do this before or after, and it will really help you. It calms us down. It just kind of puts us in touch with the emotion and the process of breathing, and it's just a wonderful way to sort of like target that stress, that momentary stress. So okay, and then to kind of just quickly a few more things. So this one is switching our mindset a little bit. It's a good way to practice self-care. Sometimes we generate a lot of stress to ourselves because we feel that we may not be good at something, that if let's say we didn't get a job, oh, I'm just not good enough, I will never be good at this. So those are the kind of thoughts that can be really negative, and it causes a lot of harm to our self-esteem. Is definitely not practicing self-care. So if we switch our mind to a growth, if we sort of switch to a growth mindset, there's always room. We understand that when there's room for improvement, we can do that, right? We don't have to feel that, oh, I'm just not good at this. No, it's not that. It's, I'm gonna keep working on this so I will get where I need to be. I will accomplish what I want. I'll get the things that I need to do. They're gonna get done. So it's always a growth process. We know that nothing has to be perfect from the beginning or ever. Perfectionism can take a big toll on people, but we're in life undergoing a growth process. So understanding growth is the only way. And it can really help us heal, right? So that's also, I know someone said initially putting limits on other people. It's amazing, yes. So I know this is something that many of us don't understand until, I don't know, I think I'm just starting to understand the importance of saying no to others, and setting those boundaries is very important. Sometimes when we become conscious that we're doing that we're saying yes to people just so that they may not get upset, or because we want them not to get mad at us, or we don't want them thinking that we don't really want to help them. We're putting that toll and that weight on us, and many times we barely have time to do all the things that we need to do. But then someone comes and says, oh, can you do this for me? And we immediately say yes, and we're afraid to say no. So that we can work on that. It doesn't have to be that way. And then the next part of the process is we feel, okay, we learn how to say no. We can say no to people. So the next piece is not to feel guilty about telling them no. So it's, again, it's growth. It's part of the process, but it's important to learn how to say no and not feel guilty about it. I think that's also an important part of it. So if they get mad at me, that's on them. That is not on you. It's nothing that you did. So that's very important. Some people are naturally good at it, and some of us need to work on it. But it's a process worth doing, because otherwise we just become overwhelmed. So when we say, okay, I'm overwhelmed, how much is it because of your real responsibilities, and how much is it because you couldn't say no to what other people were asking from you? So setting those limits and those boundaries is incredibly important. The other technique is that of self-care, and you also mentioned it, well, in a way, the journaling piece, and it's been studied and proven to work, is gratitude. And people can do it in conjunction with journaling. So when people write things down, they might write down things that they are thankful for. And it's always good. It reminds us that even in the most dire of circumstances, or whatever is happening at this moment, we do have things to be thankful for. And especially when we journal or when we write it down, that is a way of processing our thoughts. If we don't do that, well, feeling gratitude is positive. So if you want to keep it in, but it's always good to being able to look back at it and say, okay, yes, it makes it more real. If you're experiencing negative feelings, it's also good to write it down and journal your emotions, even if they're difficult, because it helps process those emotions. If we don't process emotions, they're gonna stay in. They're not going anywhere. And they'll come up one way or another. So journaling is a way to process things, and it's incredibly helpful. There are good prompts to journal, and online you can search like prompts to journaling. I don't know if the person who journaling is still here, but or and wants to share maybe if you have a resource or how you start the process. I know in the past, I don't journal as often as I want to, but when I do, it sometimes I feel like, what am I going to write about? It might be difficult. So sometimes once I start writing a few words, it just sort of starts flowing. And next thing you know, there's 3 pages. But sometimes it can be hard. So there are good prompt questions. So perhaps it could be something like, what did I learn today that will help me in the future? Or if I could have done something differently today, what would that be? Or if you want to practice both gratitude and journaling, you can say, today I'm grateful for, right? So these are some of the prompt questions that you can use, but there are so many of them, and there are a lot of good on YouTube. Also, you can find some journaling kind of starting questions as well, if you like. So, but definitely writing things down, because it takes the weight off of you. So, and last but not least, this is my favorite, and it goes back to that negative inner talk or dialogue that we have constantly going on. Just be our own BFF, or treating ourselves like we are our best friends, because we should be, we need to be our own best friends. So many times, let's say I didn't get that promotion, or I didn't get that job that I needed and wanted. Oh, I'm so dumb. I'm not capable, right? If I look in the mirror and, I've been wearing the same sweatpants for like, the entire pandemic. Oh, I'm so ugly. I'm getting so old. Look at these dark circles, right? So all of these things, negative self-talk, and we need to put a stop to that. It's hurting our self-esteem. It's not creating growth. It's not self-care. So just the way we learn that negative inner dialogue, we can replace it. We can relearn positive and more loving words for us, and have a more positive dialogue with ourselves. So that's very important. You can think about it this way. What I'm telling myself right now, would I say this to my best friend, right? So if you wouldn't say that to your best friend, why would you say that to yourself? Because you are your own best friend. So, every morning, every night, especially now that many of us have not seen our families for different reasons, the pandemic. Maybe we haven't been able to hug our friends, our family members. Just give yourself a big hug. You can visualize them, and you can, but most of all, hug yourself and that also releases those feel-good chemicals into your brain, just the action of hugging yourself and feeling that self-love. It's a practice, right? So definitely it's a practice worth doing for sure. And this is probably one of my favorite resources. I didn't update it, but but you can go to actionforhappiness.org. It's a nonprofit group, and they have these calendars every month, and you can kind of look at some of the actions. You can try to do it every day. One of the things that sometimes when we're trying to build those habits, if you just check on the calendar, you just kind of stick with them just so that all the squares get full, instead of the actual. It's not so much about the actual habit, it's more about filling up your calendar. So I don't know, that's just for me, but if it might work for you too. But take a look, and if you find any actions, it doesn't have to be that particular day, but I feel like it gives you a lot of really good ideas about practicing self-care and some of the things that that we can do. And just from my own experience at the program, we have many volunteers who are breast cancer survivors, for example, and I have been a volunteer with other organizations myself, and I have to tell you, I'm going to stop sharing this. I have to tell you, I love and I feel a huge sense of self-care when I take care of others too. So again, if you feel full, if you feel fulfilled, and you feel like you're taking care of your own needs, again, you can also take care of others. And when you help someone in need, that also gives you, not because of obligation, not because it's part of your daily routine, but because you're taking the time to really help someone or volunteer for an organization. So that's also a good way to practice self-care as well, as long as it's not depleting you or leaving you your glass a little bit more empty. It should never be like that. So okay, so I'm going to do you, if you want to share how you feel now. I know you were feeling a little overwhelmed and tired, distressed initially. You can share how you feel in this moment. I didn't talk, oh my God, full thanks. I didn't talk about meditation so much. We tend to do it more in the stress program, but definitely take a time for silence and meditation. That's a gift that we give ourselves for sure. Yes, Joette, excited. Yes, we should be excited about taking some of these steps for sure. I'm gonna include my information again. My name is Angelica, and my phone number, it's 516-877-4331. So if you're interested in more programs, if you like to talk more about different ways in which we can, you can practice self-care, if you want to give me suggestions about practicing self-care, I always welcome them. And also, most importantly, also part of self-care is going for your doctor's appointments, going for your screenings, even though sometimes it's not as fun, but taking care of your physical health in that way is practicing self-care as well. So if you know someone who needs a mammogram, but let's say they lost their job, they don't have insurance, we can help them. So we can refer them so they can get a free PAP, a free mammogram. Men and women 50 and over can get colon cancer screening. So these days where a lot of people have lost their health insurance or they're struggling, this is something that they don't have to worry about. So you can always contact me and we'll be happy to make a referral so that they can get the healthcare that they need as well. So, and also if you know someone who has experienced breast cancer or their families, we have tons of programs at the university. Right now we're doing them on Zoom, but they're very interesting, relevant topics for anyone affected by breast cancer. And we would love to connect with you and have you again. So you can always check our Facebook at Adelphi Breast Cancer Program and on our website. So thank you so much. I see my doggy is waking up right on time. So thank you so much, everyone. And I hope this gave you some ideas, and practice that self-care because you are worth it. So give yourself that hug and go to sleep early tonight.
Thank you, Angelica. An excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Lot of good information. Another thing people have been doing for self-care with the meditation is yoga. There's we have a very popular chair yoga class that's on Thursday mornings virtually, and it's chair yoga / with a little bit of meditation thrown in, and it jump starts people's mornings, and you know, I guess it makes them feel happy. And also there's very nice flavors of, you mentioned tea, but those nice green teas they have out there, you know, with the antioxidants, they do perk you up a little bit.
That sounds amazing. I want to come to chair yoga.
It's every Thursday morning at 11 o'clock. It's going to resume again on May the 6th, and we have on East Hampton Library homepage on the calendar and on Eventbrite, you can click the sign up there to get the Zoom link for the day of the event, and it's very nice. Everybody has a good time with that yoga class. But this is a very popular and timely topic, self-care, and I think a lot of materials were discussed, and many people had some wonderful comments. I thank everyone for zooming in and participating, and I thank Angelica for being able to present this to us tonight. I wish everybody all the best and have a great weekend. Enjoy. Bye-bye.